This is Gary Emery, and I would like to talk to you about overcoming anxiety. You need to understand that you create your anxiety and that you can dispel it in fast and effective ways. Here's how you become anxious. First, you think something dangerous will happen. Then you believe your thought that it is dangerous and act as if it is dangerous. In most cases, your thought is based on nonsense instead of common sense. I want you to really grasp this. Your fear happens all in your mind. You make up your fearful thought in your mind because you believe and act as if the thought is true. You give power to the thought. It becomes real to you. You believe the thought is real instead of something that is a product of your own thinking. You forget it's just a thought, so your heart beats faster, your mouth feels like it has cotton in it, and your whole body goes on full alert. Then you think up more fearful thoughts, this time about your symptoms. You think you're going to get sick, go crazy, or die, and the problem gets worse. Your thinking and perceptions determine your separate reality, which is made up of how you feel and act. Each person has his or her own separate reality. You create your experiences through your mind. That's why you need to see and understand the central role your thinking plays in your life. Do you feel like you have no choice about being anxious? Do you believe something or someone outside of you is making you feel this way? Do you feel as if you are locked in a situation that is terrible and frightening? You probably think your thoughts are real, but it's something you make up, like a movie. The truth is that you make up your own movie as you go along. Your mind is a camera that records the movie. Most of the time, the camera runs on automatic focus and gives an accurate and well-balanced report of what is going on. Your camera moves around and takes in reality. The clarity of your focus determines your take of reality. When you get anxious, it's as if an opinionated and egotistical director takes over. This director takes the camera off automatic focus and begins to direct the way the camera records your current reality. The director orders your thinking around based on ego, bias, prejudice, faulty thinking, and a need to be in control. When you see a real movie, it's an image projected onto the screen. You never see the pure external reality. Your thinking works the same way. What you see in your mind is like the screen. You don't see the pure external reality. Instead, your mind chooses the angle and aperture to capture the image projected onto the screen. No matter what your mood is, you only see your image of the world, not the real world. External reality, the physical world, is in constant change and motion. Your mind's ability to see and record external reality doesn't change. It's a constant. So your life experiences are always self-inflicted or self-created. Your mind is always working, always in the now. Please listen. Each moment gives you a fresh opportunity to capture and define external reality. You are constantly creating your separate reality moment by moment, just as others are constantly creating their own separate realities moment by moment. There is no group or herd mind on the planet. There are, however, several billion separate realities. Your separate reality is affected by your mood. When you are in a good mood, you see external reality clearly and sharply. Colors are brighter. You see the details vividly. At these times, your mind is on automatic focus, a clear channel. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to say, what does all this mean? Your mind continues to naturally adjust the aperture so that reality stays in focus. This is a wonderful state. At these times, you are seeing and experiencing instead of thinking and defining your experiences. The camera is turned outward instead of in on yourself. You don't have to keep telling yourself to focus on the moment. It's all automatic. Unless you get into a negative emotional state, such as anxiety, then you begin to listen to this self-talk. Like the troublesome director, your self-talk starts up. You begin to focus on your self-talk, and this self-talk tries to override the automatic focus way of seeing the world. As this happens, you begin to be distracted by your self-talk, and thus you see reality much less clearly. Your self-talk is an endless loop. You can get nowhere with it. the automatic focus of your camera shuts down. Your self-talk fills up your mind and stops you from the pure experience of the moment. You become foggy and unfocused. You are distracted by trying to sort out all the messages from your self-talk. You think your self-talk will solve the problem, but your self-talk really is the problem. You need to quiet down your mind, not speed it up. Let me say it again because it's important. Self-talk clouds your mind, uses up your psychic energy, takes up your usable mental capacity. As a result, you stop paying attention to what is outside of you. The world hasn't all of a sudden turned bad or hostile. The problem is your take of reality. It's skewed by your self-talk, which usually is an attempt to control the future. When does a self-talk or director take over? As you become more anxious and insecure. Your mind starts to race with fearful thoughts. Your self-talk kicks in. This shouldn't be this way. If that happened, your view of outside reality becomes jumpy and incomplete. As a result, you become even more scared. Your racing thoughts block out and filter out more and more external reality. You become more and more anxious as you stop looking clearly at what is going on around you. To overcome anxiety, it is important to see clearly how your mind works. First, you need to understand you create your own separate reality. Second, you need to understand you create your own separate reality by how you view and think about external reality. By external reality, I mean everything outside of you, including your body and physiological process. If you see external reality in a muddled way, your separate reality becomes one of muddled feelings and muddled thinking. What you see is what you get. Moment by moment, you are creating your own reality by how you are thinking and seeing. And the more you go off automatic focus in the clear channel and listen instead to your self-talk, such as, when he does this, it means that, or what if this happens, the less clearly you see reality. I like to repeat this. Once your self-talk starts going, you no longer see external reality objectively. At that point, you begin to define your physical reality based upon your internal filters, your biases, prejudices, fears, and other faulty thinking. Your separate reality becomes trance-like. Have you ever gotten a traffic ticket? You were probably caught up in a self-talk trance instead of paying attention to what was going on. Most accidents occur when your focus is distracted by your self-talk. Your self-talk, instead of protecting you, makes you more vulnerable. Your mind has 4 processes. The first is when you pay attention to what is happening around you. You see what is going on, using your senses of sight, hearing, taste, and touch. This is a clear channel. The second is voluntarily picturing something. Psychologists call this visualizing. The third is you involuntarily picture something. We call this imaging or imagination. The fourth is you engage in verbal self-talk. You rely solely on your thinking organ and forget your other sense organs of sight and hearing and smelling. These 4 mental processes go up from the concrete to the abstract. I like to talk about the last 2, imaging and self-talk, because this is how you create your anxiety. You imagine something bad or think about something in a fearful way. You can't be anxious if you are fully paying attention to what is going on or purposely visualizing something. It's your self-talk that causes the problem. Do you believe other people or outside circumstances cause your anxiety? This is what I call System 1 thinking. In System 1, you mistakenly believe that others or circumstances are responsible for your separate reality, and you are responsible for others' separate reality. It's important here to see that your unique reality is your sole creation. It is determined by how you are thinking or seeing the world. If you don't like the picture being projected by your thinking, you have a choice. You can blame the bad picture on the subject matter, or you can see that the problem is in your camera. Your automatic focus isn't working properly. You can set the focus manually by making a decision to refocus or rethink the situation. You may fail to see that others' reality is created by their cameras or minds. You often have it backwards. You blame something outside of you for causing your anxiety and blame yourself for others' bad feelings, when in truth, the cause is coming from inside each person. Once you realize your anxiety is coming from your mind, not circumstances, you can start to work at the causal level instead of the effect level. When you feel anxious, you blame circumstances, and then you miss the key point. You think you are anxious because you have to give a talk or go to the doctor. You mistakenly give the power for your experiences to other people or to external circumstances. You think you need a money-back guarantee that everything will be okay for you to be anxiety-free. Although at times you can create some external circumstances and you can influence others, you can't control them. If you hinge your emotional stability on whether circumstances are exactly as you want them to be, you create an emotional roller coaster for yourself. Because you mistakenly believe circumstances, which include others in your body, are causing your anxiety, you believe you have to control circumstances. You then start to try to control what is uncontrollable, and then, because you're more insecure, your mind starts to race even faster. What you try to control controls you. So if you try to control your symptoms, they end up controlling you. This escalates until you eventually feel totally out of control, a state of panic and powerlessness that leaves you feeling even more vulnerable to threatening circumstances. You can easily tell if you are in a state of mind where you believe external circumstances have the power. You are in a low mood, you worry and are defensive and take everything personally. You feel stressed out and overwhelmed. You become mistrustful of yourself and others, or in other words, paranoid and suspicious. You lack creative energy. You blame and analyze yourself and others. You think more and see less. You're in an overall state of insecurity because you believe you're at the mercy of uncontrollable circumstances. When you understand at a deep level that you alone create your own unique and separate reality by how you think about and perceive reality, you're on System 2. Another name for System 2 is the choice system. In this system, you realize that you create your life by how you choose to think. You need to understand at a very deep level that you are a decision maker. Your free will consists of your freedom to choose how or what you want to think about or not think about. At any moment, you can choose to think differently. Try to grasp at a deep level that you are a decision maker. Probably less than 1 out of 100 people realize that they have the free will to choose what they want to think about. One patient dying of AIDS said he had the worst 24 hours of his life. He had read an article about dying and thought about dying for 24 hours straight. He was amazed when he was told he had the freedom to think about or not think about dying. A week later, he said he felt great and had stopped thinking about dying. Up until then, he failed to realize that he had a choice in what to think about or not think about. Here it is again, and listen carefully because this is important. Your thinking is what creates your separate reality. Go for the deep understanding that you have a choice in how you create your separate reality. You're the ultimate decision maker when it comes to your reality. If you want an anxiety-free reality, you can create that for yourself. You can always create a different experience by choosing to think differently. When you're able to see that you create your anxiety by your own thinking, you claim the power to create a different experience. When you take accountability for your own reality, good or bad, you free yourself to create a positive reality for yourself. You can create positive or useful experiences by choosing to think differently. You need to understand how your mind works. Otherwise, you will be imprisoned by your mind and pushed around by your own thoughts. Your thinking operates differently than the outside physical world. In the physical world, you use the concepts of change and control. If you want a clean car, you have to change its dirty state before it can be clean. It takes time to wash the car and physical energy. You need tools like a bucket, rag, soap, and a hose. When it comes to creating your own internal experiences, the concept of change and control are irrelevant, unnecessary, and often a direct hindrance. You direct your thinking by the principle of choice or selection. If you dislike a line of thinking, you can choose a different one. For example, if you catch yourself thinking that you have to fight and resist your anxiety and you find this is making matters worse, which it will, you can choose or select a different line of thought. You don't have to fight and resist. You can acknowledge and accept the anxiety, and you'll find this starts to eliminate your anxiety. Because happiness and contentment depend on your thinking, you want to use concepts or ideas that are right for the job. When it comes to your thinking, the concept of choice makes you powerful. The concept of control makes you powerless. The concept of control works well in the physical world, but poorly in creating desired experiences. For example, if you try to control your feelings of anxiety, you'll get more of them. You're focusing on what you don't want, the anxiety, so you get more of it. I want to go over again what I said about System 1. How you think, feel, and act is your separate reality, and each person is responsible for his or her own separate reality. If you are anxious, for example, in System 1, you think that something outside of you is making you anxious. You think that you are trapped in a terrible situation and have no choice in how it comes out. In System 2, you realize that you alone create your separate reality by how you think about circumstances, and the others create their separate reality by how they think about circumstances. If you're anxious in System 2, you know that you are creating the anxiety by how you're thinking, although not on purpose. In System 2, you know that you write and direct your own movie. If you dislike how the movie's going, you can redirect how it goes. By using the principle of choice or selection, how you think, you can create the experiences that you want in your life. Often fearful thoughts do come automatically. You certainly don't choose to have them. They come because how you think is directly related to the mood state you're in. Understanding the relationship between your moods and your thinking can have a profound effect in your life. I say this because I found that many people will know about the more powerful thinking principle of choice. They will know it works and yet fail to use it. Why do they fail to use a technique that works? The fly in the ointment is your moods. Moods and thinking are distinct and different from one another, yet they often coexist. Hence, you are in a mood state at the same time you have thoughts. And while your thoughts are distinct and different from your mood, now this is important, the number and type of automatic thoughts you have is related to the mood state you're in. So they're distinct and different. They coexist. And your thinking is related to your mood state you're in. If you are in a negative mood state, for example, you have negative thoughts. You become a magnet for negative perceptions and thoughts. This is why you fail to use choice, even when you know at an intellectual level the power of a choice. When you are in a negative mood state, you often refuse to use helpful procedures, either because of the bad mood state you don't want to, or because of your negativistic mood you believe the procedures won't help. When your mood drops, your understanding or wisdom also drops, or in other words, you become dumber. When you go into a low mood state, you lose 25 to 35 IQ points. Extremely depressed people have trouble even remembering the basics of life. Many depressed people have trouble adding simple numbers or even driving a car. When you are in a negative mood state, you have trouble concentrating, memorizing, or solving problems. Why? Because your mind is an information processor with limited capacity at any one moment. When you're in a low mood, your mind is filled with negative self-talk. You're allowing your self-talk to misdirect you and misguide you. Because you're misdirected and consumed with your own thoughts, you're unable to bring in new, helpful information from the outside world. Your racing negative thoughts block you from paying attention to reality. You can't be caught up in your own self-talk and see reality clearly at the same time. As your mood improves, your self-talk quiets down and your automatic focus takes over and you start seeing again. Each mood state has a corresponding state of mind. When you're in a vulnerable or anxious mood, for example, you're sensitive to threatening situations. Your mind actively seeks out frightening possibilities to think about. Your self-talk misdirection begins. Your self-talk vacillates from frightening yourself to reassuring yourself. This takes the form of a double monologue, and it comes from your need to try to control what you perceive as being uncontrollable. As I said, there's an ongoing interaction between your thoughts and moods. Thinking can create mood states, and moods generate thinking. Negative mood states can be the result of fatigue or low blood sugar, or they can just seem to come on spontaneously. Mood states follow the law of the ladder. You can experience higher or low moods on the ladder. The moods go up rung by rung from apathy, grief, or depression to shame, fear, hate, rage, antagonism, pain, irritation, boredom, interest, enthusiasm, exhilaration, joy, and on the highest rung, serenity. As you can see, the lower rung mood states are negative. The first general low mood state is anger. This is followed by the second general mood state of anxiety and the third general mood state of depression. It's important when you're in a bad mood to acknowledge, accept, and experience the mood rung you're on, no matter how negative. This is how you stop the descent down to the next run on the ladder. As I said, you need to accept and experience your bad moods to keep you from dropping lower on the mood ladder. It can start anywhere. Sometimes you have trouble accepting and experiencing good feelings, and so you start to feel bad. You say things such as, "Things are going so well, it's frightening." Self-talk like this leads downward to bad feelings, and sure enough, things were too good. If you are unable to acknowledge and experience the rung of the mood ladder you're on, for instance, anger, you start to slip and tend to start to feel anxious. And if you're unable to tolerate the anxiety, you drop another rung and start to feel depressed. You can move all the way down to a paralyzing state of apathy. Your moods go down in order. This makes sense from an evolutionary point of view. As a holdover from the cave days. If the environment is benign, you feel good. If there is some threat, your first response is anger. Anger motivates you to fight. If the threat is too dangerous to fight, the next step is to get anxious. Anxiety pushes you to escape or protect yourself in some way. If you're unable to escape, the next step would be to give up and not move, which would put you in a state of depression. Mood states are all-encompassing. They are a gestalt. By that I mean that you see the whole world from the vantage point of the mood you're in. It's almost as if you have multiple personalities. For example, when you're in an anxious mood, you see the whole world as threatening. You believe you always have been anxious, and you're sure you'll stay anxious forever. Your fearful self-talk starts directing you and runs the show. You tell yourself, "Nothing in the past has ever helped my anxiety, and nothing in the future will help. This is a killer script." Through the eyes of your anxious mood, you see yourself as being helpless and vulnerable to powerful and controlling outside forces. Moods carry themselves by their own momentum. When you're in a negative mood, you're like one of these little plastic birds that perches on a glass of water. The goofy little bird tips into the water and then tips back, tips into the water and then tips back. Your mind wants to stay in whatever mood state you're in, so your self-talk works as the weight to tip you back in the glass of water and replenish your mood. When you're anxious, your body and mind wants to continue to feel anxious, at least at some level. When you're in a low mood, you need to understand the two crucial points I keep stressing. First, your thoughts are just thoughts and not reality. And second, you need to understand that your thoughts in this state of mind have little correspondence with external reality. They're just thoughts. No need to see them as any more than noise, like the hum of an air conditioner. They're harmless if you can realize they're just thoughts that are coming out of a low state of consciousness, a state of insecurity. When you're in a good mood, a higher state of consciousness, your thoughts are still just thoughts and not reality. However, the better your mood, the more likely your thoughts correspond to external reality. Your thinking, in other words, is more practical and more task-relevant the higher mood state. When you're in a higher mood, when you're interested in life and enjoying it, you have more common sense. Your thinking is more rational and more sane. You see more clearly, so you're smarter and wiser. You're more creative and more open to inspiration. You're more in touch with your intuition. You're kinder, more compassionate, and easier to be around. When you feel good, you're in a state of mental health, and this is conducive to physical health and good relationships with others in the world. In higher states, you'll find it easier to learn. For this reason, the better you feel, the more you'll get out of this tape. That's why I suggest you listen to it in different mood states. Don't put it away until the next time you're low on the rung. You'll learn something different each time you listen to it. Tapes often can raise your mood or consciousness, because when you're listening to tape, you're not listening to your self-talk. And because your self-talk is what keeps you in a low mood, your mood will start to raise as your self-talk lessens. This is the reason it's unproductive to talk endlessly to others about your problems. Commiseration only keeps you stuck in a low mood state. To summarize, your anxiety is the product of a vulnerable mood state plus your fearful self-talk or thinking. Anxiety requires a vulnerable mood. Once you get in this mood and are feeling vulnerable, thoughts and images that you would normally dismiss create great anxiety. For example, if you're in a calm and confident mood, You can easily discuss cancer without getting anxious. But when you're in a vulnerable mood, the same discussion could lead to panic. Being caught up in this vulnerable mood is like getting caught in a spider web, a web of frightening and demanding thoughts. Each thought is another loop in the web. Eventually, you tie yourself up. You feel more helpless and more trapped with each thought. Consider for a moment performance anxiety and the thoughts that you have during this anxiety. When you're suffering from performance anxiety, you think you must perform perfectly. You must be error-free. You feel like you must entertain and must enlighten those you're performing for. You have no margin for error throughout the performance. Each thought creates another loop in the web. You force yourself to perform perfectly. This force or push to do what you don't want to do creates feelings of anger in you. Because the performance is necessary for something you do want, or is a duty you want to carry out, you have no one to get angry at. And you may think if you do get angry, you may not do the performance. And because getting angry makes you feel out of control, you don't acknowledge your anger. You train yourself to ignore it. Because you have your own thoughts, you have no one to blame but yourself. You're afraid of the consequence of this anger, so you stay stuck in the anxiety web. You squish the feelings of anger in your shoe, and you drop to the anxiety mood state, a lower rung, right below anger. Your thoughts are your own, so that makes the anxiety even worse. You're doing it to yourself. Your thoughts and beliefs are based on your value system and are generally supported by society. For example, people usually do want to perform well. They do want to present themselves in the best light. They do want to be error-free. And people want to come across as appearing confident and competent. Because of the perceived social demands or social musts and your own lack of margin of error, you can get yourself paralyzed and caught in a web of musts. Sometimes your anxiety web becomes so tight that you may think you need other people or a different central nervous system to help loosen the loops. When you go into a negative mood state, you're likely to become psychologically reversed. When you're in System 1, that is when you believe outside circumstances are creating your eternal reality, you are reversed. It's called reversal because you're going against the pleasure principle of wanting to feel good and wanting to have what you want. This is related to control. When you're feeling insecure or threatened, you have a need to control circumstances. One of the ways to stay in control is to feel bad. You use your bad feelings to control you or give you a sense of control. When you need to be in control and think you're being controlled, you're reversed on some level, and you want to stay in this negative mood state. You don't want to feel good. Psychological reversal, like negative moods, serves some evolutionary or survival function. People switch into this reverse state when they perceive circumstances as bad, when becoming strong from adversity would be beneficial, or in other words, when you think you need to be in control. It's really an illusion of control. I can't have what I want, so I don't want it. I'll just eat a worm. Depressed people, for example, are extremely strong-willed and use their depression to give them a sense of control of their life. You can't fire me, I quit. It's nearly impossible to get a depressed person to do something he or she doesn't want to do. Their depression keeps them strong and gives them a sense of control. When you're reversed, use your anxiety for negative strength. For example, you motivate yourself to do something you don't want to do by imagining the worst. If I don't do my taxes, I'll go to jail. When you create anxiety to get strong, you become afraid to get rid of your anxiety. You may think that you'll get weak if you don't have all your anxious feelings. For example, you keep yourself working hard because you're fearful that if you don't, your family will starve. Your motivation is this negative image. You may even be afraid of feeling good because you associate feeling good with weakness and losing control. When you're reversed, you motivate yourself, not by choosing to create what you want in your life, but by trying to remove something bad or to avoid something terrible. This puts your focus on the negative instead of the positive. Remember the increase principle. Where your focus goes is where your energy goes. When you focus on the negative, you get more of it. When you think about something fearful, you'll have more fearful thoughts. What you think about, you get back at the same level. What you think about at the thinking level is what you will get back at that level. If you're focused on bad thoughts, you'll get more of them. If you want to create good experiences in your life, switch your focus to what you do want. You don't have to use control or get rid of the bad things. You just focus on what you want. Reversal comes when you're using the physical paradigm of looking at the world. You believe your problems come from the physical world, so you use physical concepts to fight the world. When you're reversed, you believe you need to control yourself, others, and the world. One of the best ways to get unreversed is to give up your need for control. Control is a major anxiety issue. As I said, you motivate yourself by trying to prevent something bad from happening, and yet, when you try to control people or events, you move in and out of control. When you're out of control, you feel anxious. Totally controlling events or other people is an impossibility. When you let go of control and simply focus on what you want in your life, you have endless possibilities. At the physical world level, you think that other people or outside circumstances cause your bad feelings, so you have to control them. You learn to deal with the world in this way when you were a child. Until you were 12 years old, you spent your time learning about the physical world. You learned that if you put your finger in a flame, your finger would hurt, or that if you hit a window with a rock, the window would break. This is the physical world. Mastering the physical world is one of the developmental jobs of children to the age of 12. The physical world paradigm is one of cause and effect. One thing causes another. If you drop a piece of fine china on concrete, it breaks. If you become unbalanced on a bike, you fall. You learn about this cause and effect paradigm early in your life. You learn that if you cry, someone will feed you. If you smile, you get fussed over. You know that one thing causes another. The window breaks when you throw a rock at it. Your finger blisters and hurts when you stick it in the fire. In the physical world paradigm, you use the concept of control to control events. You learn to control your bladder, you control the bike so that you can get the effect you want. You learn what tools you need, how much time it will take, and how much energy you have to expand to make or change what you want. After the age of 12, you develop the capacity for using your thinking to create what you want in life. But this principle is rarely taught, so you continue to use cause and effect thinking even when it doesn't work. Your boss criticizes you and you feel bad. You get stuck in a traffic jam and you get angry. You think that one thing causes the other. You blame your boss for making you feel bad or the traffic jam for making you angry. To let go of your anxiety, you need to understand the self-defeating nature of control and how thinking you need to control your symptoms of anxiety actually increases them. If you want to keep your anxiety alive, just try to control the symptoms. Your anxiety will stay alive because you're controlled by what you're trying to control. Your self-talk focuses your thinking on the anxiety, and the increased principle takes over. You get more of what you focus on. Control can be a problem in two ways for you. First, you may think you need to be in control of the situation, or second, you may think you can't stand to have others control you and make decisions for you. In both cases, you think you need to be in control when you feel insecure or threatened. But even if you get control, you feel insecure because with control comes the thought that you could lose control at any moment. It's as if you have an alligator by the mouth and it could let go at any moment and bite you. The classic conflict is thinking that you need to be controlled and you can't be controlled at the same time. You believe you need to control your eating or working, and yet you refuse to be controlled by your own diets and own work schedules. You can't stand being controlled, and so you end up rebelling even against yourself. When you feel controlled, you get angry, and when you don't feel free to express your anger, because you fear the consequences, you go down a rung to anxiety. When you try to control any of your functions, whether it's breathing, swallowing, or thinking, you create problems. When you try to control what can't be controlled, you feel out of control. Fear of losing control usually means, I'm afraid I will go crazy and die if I lose control. The truth is that there's no place to go except right here, in this moment. You always come right back to the moment. Here are some ways you can learn to let go of control. First, stop your self-talk or overthinking. Self-talk means you're trying to stay in control by using your mind. When you overthink, you stay stuck in whatever state of mind you're in. You run the same dialogue with yourself or others over and over in your mind. You continue to spin your wheels. Remember, moment by moment, you have the choice to drop your thoughts, at least for a moment. Stop trying to distract yourself from the anxiety or the fear stimulus. Usually this doesn't work because a distraction is a form of denial or a way of trying to stay in control. It's better to look fear fully and honestly in the face. When you're honest about your fear, you come to know it better. You know the truth about what you fear, and truth is one of the biggest enemies of control. Another way to let go of control is to stop seeking reassurance. You ask others if they think you have Alzheimer's disease or if they think you look okay. When you find yourself seeking reassurance, stop it. Face the lion. Tell yourself, if I die, I die. If I get cancer, I get cancer. If I go berserk and kill my family, so be it. If I become a homosexual, so what? Understand that it's useless to worry. Worry is another type of control strategy. Worrying is a way to manipulate yourself or motivate yourself so that you'll be able to avoid something bad happening in your life. Experiment with some of the strategies I've been talking about, and you'll find you can get what you want in life without manipulating yourself with worry. If you're constantly lighting fires under yourself, you're using a control strategy against yourself. You're using yet another form of negative self-manipulation. You're trying to get yourself to do something, and your self-talk tells you that unless you do it, catastrophes will happen. A better approach is let go of control and focus on what you do want. Seek to know what you're trying to avoid. Another dysfunctional way to control circumstances is to ignore needed input. When you need to be in control, you close down your awareness of what you can't control by ignoring reality. You're planting a seed for failure. Instead, look for all the factors in a situation, all of the relevant details you need to know. Hear and see what you need to hear and see to get what you want. Find out what is going on so that you can master the situation. Finally, drop your self-image. That's how you learn to let go of control. Once your image no longer needs to be protected, you can stop trying to control everything. Stop trying to control reality to boost up your ego. Go for a deep understanding of why trying to gain control is undesirable. Really know that while control can work up to a certain point, ultimately it's dysfunctional. When you use control strategies, you usually flip-flop from one extreme to another. You diet, then binge. You procrastinate, then you work straight through the weekend. What's the better approach? Drop the whole idea of control and focus on what you want most and realize you're a decision maker. This is how you become powerful. Thinking you need to control something is just a thought anyway, and you can drop any thought. Stop giving power to control thoughts, and they will start to fade away. Try an experiment. Right now, try to control this moment and feel comfortable. Go ahead. Really try to control this moment. Now do the opposite and let go of control and see how this feels. If you have a problem you're trying to control, start with letting go of 1% of your need to control it. Let go of one small part of what you believe you have to keep in control. Letting go of the need to control, even for one moment, is a victory. Consciously stop trying to keep things together. Maybe things need to fall apart before they begin to fall into place. Let them fall apart, then improvise. Deal with what you have right now. This is the moment to focus on. For example, give your anxiety symptoms the control. This is how you gain power. Tell the truth. Truth is control's enemy, so telling the truth is a way to give up control. Be spontaneous. Deal with whatever comes up. Let go of control and improvise. This is the secret to success in nearly every area of life. I want you to understand the difference between control and power at a deep level. So please turn the tape over and learn how to take the power by giving up the control. Is focusing on what you don't want. Power is movement toward what you do want. When you focus on what you do want, you become powerful. This is how you overcome your anxiety. You drop the idea of control with this negative strength. Control is based on your thinking that you have to avoid something harmful, usually something harmful to your ego or self-image. Power comes from an inner conviction that you can get what you want. You energize what you focus on or think about. When you try to control your anxiety, you focus on it. You feed it and keep it alive. Drop the idea of control. Focus on what you want and nurture your positive visions. When you try to control circumstances and others, the circumstances and others have the power. You're powerless. Instead, hold the vision of what you want. I want to stress this. The power to have what you want is within you. You can choose what you want to think about. This is freedom. When you're trying to control something or someone, you need tools and effort. You struggle to stay in control. You work at control. Your need to be in control is an instinctual response to threat or insecurity. You're operating out of the physical world paradigm. Instead, switch to the psychological paradigm. Focus on your thinking and use vision, choice, and awareness. You need no tools, no effort, and almost no energy. And yet, you're more powerful. Along with your need to be in control comes the fear of losing control at any moment. It's like walking a tightrope. When you're out there in the tightrope, you're tense, cautious, every muscle quivering to control your balance. You're in control for the moment, but at any second you could lose control and fall to your death. This state of fear, brought about by your need to be in control, causes you to drop to a lower level of consciousness. In contrast, when you're powerful, you feel good. You're at a high level of consciousness. When you're trying to stay in control, you hear from your nemesis, the director. You get caught up in self-talk. Your self-talk is your ego in action. You're in the first person and totally egocentric. Your focus is on I, me, we. You're full of yourself. Your self-talk is designed to protect your ego or self-image. You justify and explain yourself and try to prove you're right and others are wrong. You have a sense of entitlement. Your self-talk is full of what others should do for you and why you shouldn't have to put up with what others do. Your self-talk perpetuates the myth that you're a special person. See your self-criticism for what it is, disguised ego. You believe you should be better than others and should live up to some unrealistic high standards. How do you take the power? You focus on some result outside of yourself. You get in the third-person orientation and focus on a person, place, or thing outside of yourself. Once your ego isn't on the line, you're free and powerful. Focus outside of yourself and see what is going on. Visualize what you want. Do this, and you automatically drop your self-talk or ego. You're then in a state of mental health, because whenever you stop your self-talk, you have mental health. When you operate from the need to control the uncontrollable, you're powerless. When you're powerless, you manipulate rather than create. So you have to manipulate others or yourself to get what you want. Operate from choice, and you'll be powerful. Make your choice from what you see happening around you at the moment. Visualize what you want to happen. Be honest with others and with yourself about what you want. When you need to be in control, you need to block out of your awareness anything you think will make you feel out of control. So you have limited input. You see and hear only what makes you feel in control. On the other hand, power is based on truth. The greater the truth, the greater the power. When you're powerful, you want to know what's going on because clarity equals power. When you're trying to stay in control, you avoid anything that would make you feel out of control. You say no to life. You have an adversary relationship with reality. When you operate from power, you approach the unknown. You say yes to life. You see reality as a powerful force you can use to your advantage. Control stops you from taking risks. You're trying to hold everything together, so you're afraid to take risks because you fear everything will fall apart. Let go of your need to control. You'll have freedom to take risks and let the chips fall where they may. Here it is again. Power is letting go of control. You are much more likely to get what you want by giving up control. Successful managers know how to get the results they want. They give the control to capable people. This is related to the law of reciprocity. When you give others the control, they are more likely to go along with the end result you want. If you fight others on every control issue, you're unlikely to get what you really want in the end. Your need to be in control comes out of fear. You're motivated by trying to avoid your greatest fears. When you're feeling controlled by others or circumstances, you often feel angry. This need to be in control keeps you in a state of mental ill health, and you vacillate between anger and anxiety. Power is based on love. Love of what you want to see happen. Love is a power force. Power is creating what you most love to see happen in your life. When you're trying to control circumstances, you blame people, places, and things that you're unable to control for your bad feelings. You give your power to whatever it is that you believe makes you feel bad. When you're powerful, you're accountable for your own separate reality of experiences. You have the power within you, no matter what happens around you, to create the internal reality you want. You avoid many decisions when you're trying to stay in control. Give up control and you become decisive. You'll be willing to take a stand. Making a decision is giving up control, and that's why you can become powerful and creative. When you need to be in control, you avoid, at all costs, failures, which makes you feel out of control. When you give up control, you can take setbacks in stride. You learn from them. The thought, I need to be in control, makes you rigid, while letting go of control makes you flexible, light on your feet, ready for anything. I talked before about how you may fear happiness because you feel out of control when you're happy. You sense that happiness is too fast, too expansive, too dangerous. Anything could happen. Staying anxious and depressed may serve to slow you down. You feel more in control going 15 miles per hour than you do cruising at 50 miles per hour. When you take power, you enjoy feeling expansive and the feeling of aliveness that comes with letting go of control. By understanding the drawbacks of needing to be in control, you can summon the courage to let go of your need to control yourself, others, and circumstances. Automatically, then, you get the power, which comes from telling the truth and focusing on what you want. In other words, power comes from letting go of your need to control everything. Be willing to yield and let go at any moment, and you become master of that moment. You can always gain mastery by yielding to what is at the moment. When you're a master, you flow with whatever happens. You allow a flow of sensory information in. You quiet your mind down and see what's happening in current reality. You're in a higher state of consciousness, and so you have no need to control anything. You know you can deal with whatever happens. Even if things fall apart around you, you're free to take it all in, good or bad. Reality becomes friendly and your relationships are enhanced because you have no need to control or manipulate circumstances or others. You can know about letting go of control, but only gain the true understanding of the wisdom and working of letting go of control by experiencing the process and seeing the results. You can rarely control current reality, but you can't always yield, always go with the flow, and still end up with what you want. Almost everyone knows this, but few people do yield because they don't understand at a deep level the wisdom of it. Yielding and letting go is something you can always do to get unstuck and move to a higher level of consciousness. If you fear feeling good, remember, you can get used to anything, even being happy, which is the same thing as letting go of control. Remember the increase principle. Where you place your focus or thought is where your energy goes. Your energy flows where your thought goes. If you're anxious about something and you continue to self-talk or talk to others about it, you get more anxious. You are the victim of your own thought system. You are the one doing it to yourself. The common denominator in all negative moods is self-talk. You talk to yourself about yourself. You are often trying to reassure yourself that there's no danger or you're seeking ego-serving validations. If you're anxious, your self-talk focuses totally on yourself. Instead, focus on something outside of yourself. Look out the window, describe the environment, for example. Your anxiety will go down as your self-talk lessens. Many psychological treatments for anxiety agree. Shift the focus off yourself and onto something outside of yourself. You can't be anxious if your focus of attention is outside of yourself. This is why many people have suggested that mindfulness is an antidote for anxiety. Mindfulness simply means that you pay full attention to what is going on around you, what you are doing at the moment. You'll discover many ways to develop your mindfulness. You can play and experiment with your attention. For instance, right now, imagine that this is the first time you've seen the environment you're in. Now imagine you're an anthropologist. How would you see your environment? Now look at the situation as if you were a criminal. I keep stressing this because it's the best advice I can give you for overcoming your anxiety. Stop your self-talk. Stop your self-talk and you'll feel less anxious. To overcome your anxiety, you need to get unreversed, to let go of your need to control. Shift your focus off of yourself and onto the vision or picture of something you do want. Anytime you get your ego or self out of the picture, you'll start to feel better. Let's talk about ego for a moment. In every case of anxiety, your ego or self-image is involved. You focus on how you're calling the game instead of the dynamics of the game. You can't be anxious unless your self-image is on the line, in the picture. Your anxiety and insecurity is always related to your self-image or ego. How does this work? You have different images or beliefs of how you should behave. These pictures and beliefs constitute your self-identity or ego. Keep in mind that your self-image is just thoughts that you made up in your imagination. That's why it's called image. Your self-image of how you should be is a figment of your own imagination. Your image of how you should be has a low correspondence with how you really are. You exaggerate in your mind your own self-importance and your own overinflated abilities when you get anxious. This creates a problem. You believe you should be better than you really are. You believe people are more interested in you than they really are. You believe you are more talked about than you really are. You believe you should present yourself in a better light. Do you see how your ego is involved? You become anxious because your image is on the line, and your image is an illusion of the real you. When you think you can't live up to your image, and you usually can't, you become anxious. Then, because your image of yourself is that you should always appear cool, calm, and collected, you become even more anxious when you see yourself losing it. Your anxiety is always compounded by the thought that you should not be upset. So you get anxious over being anxious. Even if what you fear is something physical, your anxiety comes from ego problem. You say, I should never get sick. What will other people think about me? Your shame over your anxiety drops you lower on the mood ladder, and you end up getting depressed over being anxious. It's your ego. You get lost in your own self-talk. How do I look to others? How am I doing? Whenever you are unable to live up to your image, you become insecure. The solution: become aware of the world around you and your mood rises. This happens because you become less and less concerned with your image. It works the other way too. Drop your ego and illusionary self-importance, and you'll find your mood and awareness going up. You can use the ACT skills or the ACT skill to learn to drop your image, your illusionary self-importance. First, I'd like to briefly describe the 3 ACT skills to you. The ACT skills stand for acceptance, choice, and taking action. Using acceptance, choice, and taking action, you can direct your mind and see how you can use your thinking to create the experiences you want. Acceptance frees your mind from what it is fixed on. Choice allows you to redirect your thinking, and taking action keeps your focus on what you do want. First, when you're anxious, acknowledge and accept that everyone on earth has his or her own separate reality, and you have yours. Find out how your separate reality relates to your image or ego. Are you trying to be a big shot? Are you trying to avoid looking bad? Ask yourself, what is my self-image doing for me in the overall scheme of things? Ask yourself, what negative consequences am I afraid of? Am I trying to avoid a decision to protect my image? Am I trying to manipulate others to protect my image? Am I trying to manipulate myself into taking some action to protect my image? Look closely at what's going on. Remember, your anxiety is often a smokescreen designed to protect your image. It's possible that you're feeling anxious so that you can avoid some activity where you could look bad. Once you understand what is going on with your self-image, you can start to drop it. Stop giving these purely mental images power over you. Start with acceptance, add understanding, and you have compassion for yourself and for others. By understanding, I mean go beyond superficial self-talk and really see how your mind works. Why do you self-talk? The brain is set up for survival or self-protection. The brain goes to great lengths to protect your ego or self-identity, hence self-talk. You need to understand and see that your self-talk is unhelpful, then cut it out. There's an important truth you must accept and understand. You are ordinary in most respects. You invite trouble when you think you have to be the best at everything, the best parent, the best child, the best worker, the best neighbor. You don't have to be a big shot to be happy. You'll find life is much easier and more fun once you let go of your self-created self-importance. Here's another important point for you to see and understand. You're not always at your best. Sometimes you will lose your psychological well-being and act like a tired child who stayed too long at Disneyland. Once you see and accept that you're acting immaturely, you will start to be more mature and adult-like. When you act immaturely, see it, accept it, and understand it, then let it go without extra self-talk. What is maturity? Accepting that you are often immature. Now a big question. How can you accept yourself as you are? Think differently. No matter how bad you feel, you can choose to stop feeling bad. You can choose to think differently. It may be that you are upset over an ego-damaging situation that you say, I just can't accept it. I can't think differently. Okay, ask yourself, how can I choose to think differently in one small area? For instance, can I accept that 1% or 0.5% of my anxiety is brought on by my ego in this situation? If you can answer yes, you've established that you can think differently, and no matter how small the start, you're on your way. Feel good about the 1%. Every time you feel shame or self-consciousness, you have a golden opportunity to drop some of your illusionary self-importance, even if it's only 1%. Shame is what you feel when you refuse to accept you're not living up to your image. When you feel shame, you have a conflict between your image and your reality. Anxiety, like all negative emotions, includes some conflicts. On one side is your image, how you think you should be. On the other side is how you see yourself as you really are. We all have a dark side, and we all try to cover it up with false self-image. This is a question to ask yourself. Where are the self-contradictions in my life? To find the answer, look for areas of your life that don't work for you. Here's a common conflict. You feel forced to live up to some image of yourself, and the truth is that you don't want to live up to it, so you have a conflict. On one hand, you're being controlled. On the other hand, you're not living up to your image. For example, you don't want to go somewhere or do something, but you also want to have a good image. You think, I feel controlled and don't want to do it, but if I don't do it, I'll look bad. That's how your ego or self-image sets up the conflict. Here's an important point. All conflicts are in your mind. You have a set of behaviors that will work with either side of the conflict. Your self-image may be that you're a nice person. That's true. You do act nice at times. The belief that sets up the conflict is that you aren't a nice person, and that's true. At times you don't act nice. Rather than deny the dark side of yourself, the part you don't like, you're better off by admitting it. Most people know about it anyway. The people around you accept that you're not perfect. They also know you aren't perfectly awful. Why not accept that about yourself? Self-acceptance is crucial to dropping your self-image. Work on accepting the unacceptable in yourself. Accept and acknowledge your inadequacies instead of trying to convince yourself that you are 100% adequate. Conflicts keep you stuck. Once you accept yourself and stop trying to change and control yourself, you can grow from there. You remove the conflict. Acknowledge and accept what you have been resisting about yourself. You'll take the focus off whatever it is, and the problem or flaw will start to disappear. This is similar to accepting a flaw or annoyance in another person. Once you accept it and stop resisting it, you either no longer notice it or they stop doing it. The second ACT skill is choice. Choice is an active selection from a different line of thought. Choice is always available. You can always choose to think differently. Remember, when you let go of control and start creating your experiences by choosing what to think about, you become powerful. In most anxious situations, you are ambivalent. You vacillate. You shift back and forth, conflicted by two opposite thoughts or images. For example, you think, I want it, but also think I can't have it. Make a decision or a choice. Pick one thought over another. As you decide what you want, make a conscious choice to leave your image out of the decision. It's your self-image. Am I good enough or am I not good enough that causes much of the vacillation? Make a decision based on what you want, not on your self-image. Remember, once you stop being ambivalent, your anxiety will go down. You often have the most anxiety around what you most want. Your conflict is, I want it, but I can't have it. Drop the conflict. Choose to go for what you most want to see happen. For example, being free, healthy, successful, true to yourself.